Good to go. Okay. Hey, 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 beautiful people, with my dear sisters and community. I am so grateful to have you all here. And as you know, I'm Coach SaraLiz, and this is our Let's Talk About conversation for November. And that topic is seasonal woes. Just as a refresher, this Let's Talk About conversation is a community conversation series developed by myself. And it initially started when I was at Pfizer and back in 2016 as a way to educate the Pfizer community about diseases that impact people of African diaspora more harshly than others. So those conversations I started as a let's talk about lunch and learn. They were we covered sickle cell and we covered lupus. Those are the main two that I focused on. Because those are two very distinct diseases that impact our community, that is not a lot of conversation happens around it. And then over the summer, I had the most ingenious intuition to revamp these conversations into community conversations, to bring conscious awareness to situations and circumstances, not just diseases, but situations and circumstances that disproportionately impact people of the African diaspora, so that we can unitedly commit as a community to being part of the change, to moving the needle forward to healing and whole wellness. And for this conversation, it is my intention to present an authentic conversation about seasonal affective disorder and the importance of being consciously aware of feelings that could arise due to the ongoing life happenings, so that people will honor themselves, so that you, so that me, so that we as a community will honor ourselves and our mental health by making self-honoring choices, choices that honor and uplift ourselves, to move the needle forward to healing and whole wellness in the Black community. And that healing and whole wellness, all of things starts here. So this conversation is, I'm honored to have my dear sisters join me. And these two sisters are very, very important to me because they have held me up, and when I have felt down, we have unitedly joined together in through the Intervisions Institute Spiritual Life Coaching Program is where we met. And who we have at the top left, I'm not sure if that's how you see it, is Miss Viola Jordan, also AKA my prayer partner. And we also have Miss Latina Harris, aka my accountability partner. So we can see why these two sisters are, very near and dear to my heart, and why they, as we get into this conversation, you will see why these two sisters were who I was guided to have as part of this conversation, to bring some support related to seasonal affective disorder. So now that I've kind of introduced myself and this conversation, I'd like for each of you to introduce yourselves.
I am Viola Jordan, and I'm a social worker and I'm an addiction counselor. And I work with individuals and I work with families struggling with mental health issues, substance abuse issues, grief issues, loss, domestic violence, and all areas of social changes and challenges. Um, and my therapy approach is multifaceted, facet, and I just work with I work with clients and folks that are dealing also with any spiritual issues and any emotional issues at all. And so and I want to say I thank Sarah for inviting us, and I think that this is a wonderful time for us to talk about the issues, and especially with this being this time of the year, seasonal war. I just think it's a wonderful time that we can come together, because the holidays are approaching, and we also know that's another time that we really do experience symptoms of grief. We experience symptoms of depression, sadness. And so I want to thank you,
Mhm.
Sarah, for inviting us, and your
You are
spirit was
most
led to
welcome.
invite us here. So thank you. Thank you.
You are most welcome. Thank you
Yeah.
for being here.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hello, I am Latina Harris. I am a spiritual life coach, a workshop facilitator, and a mentor to many. I have a coaching program called Empowered, and I focus on women who are at a crossroads in their life. I kind of act as their life compass and navigator and helping them to make those tough decisions, to get unstuck, to set up spiritual routines if they don't have any, things like that. And in my day job or my day career, I work as a learning professional. So I work in talent development and also still do coaching and mentoring through that program as well. I am so grateful and thankful for Sarah for joining me and Miss Viola in this conversation. It is very timely and very necessary. So thank you, Sarah, for inviting me.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for being here. And as I mentioned, I we met in our spiritual life coaching program, which is very transformational for all of us. And thank you for bringing your expertise and your experience to this conversation, because I feel that it's very important for our community to hear of, how, the experiences that are happening, and to be aware of that there are people who care about them, that look like them, and that may be experiencing the same things as them, and that they too can manage and even, manage through the day and continue to live and be vibrant, even though they may have experiences that may cause them to feel, less than their lively and energetic selves. So that is really what I would am looking forward to as we, kind of dive into, let's talking about seasonal woes. As we talk about, what is SAD, right? That's an acronym for seasonal affective disorder. And seasonal depression, or is known as major depressive disorder with a seasonal pattern, which is seasonal affective disorder, the acronym of SAD. And what SAD is when, that depression is or feelings of sadness are triggered by a specific time of the year and occurs at the same time of the year, at least 2 years in a row. And since, SAD doesn't, look like many of the, major depressive disorders, there are three, key signs that distinguish, SAD and distinguish SAD or seasonal affective disorder, that people can be aware of for themselves and also, for their loved ones. And it's important to note these three areas, because in as it relates to the statistics that this is common, it's about 40% of adults actually can experience SAD throughout the year. And it actually directly impacts about 5% of people in the US. Now, let's kind of break that down as to what that looks like in how, depression kind of in mental illness kind of impacts our community. We make up 13.4% of the population. And of those, over 16% of our community are experiencing some shape or form of mental illness. That is over 7 million people. And that is just what is reported. That's not those who feel that they can pray it away, or those that suffer in silence because, they might call you crazy, or whatever the stigma is that you tell yourself that you cannot voice, or people that say, oh, it's all in your head, as something that is a negative connotation. That's not talking about those people. So, as being one of those people for a long time, And being only three, that I would represent 33% of this population of someone that suffered in silence for decades. So just kind of bringing that to the now and how that shows up and the three signs that people can kind of look and kind of feel. And there's nothing wrong. We're not saying there is anything wrong with you or anything wrong with feeling how you feel. This conversation is about honoring how you feel, is about acknowledging how you feel and to be consciously aware of how you feel, because as we go into the holidays, we must honor ourselves. So quickly, those three things that you can kind of look for, three identifying areas of sad are: one, you always feel blue and have zero energy. There is, a persistent low or depressed mood, some that a person can't shake. You feel negative and it's just on you and it's just weighing on you. That's one way that you can kind of see that you may be experiencing this, and might remember this may be at the same time of year for 2 years or more that this can occur. Then you have a loss of appetite. You may not feel hungry, or you may overeat. In my situation, I overeat. And I had an increased appetite. And with that shift in appetite, a lot of times people can look at it as the winter, right? It's just the winter pattern, and you might have certain cravings and you might oversleep, and, or a summer pattern, you might eat less, or you might experience weight loss. Pay attention to how you feel, because that's what we call deceptive intelligence of how you can be deceived to feel that it is one thing. However, the truth of the matter is you may be experiencing some sadness, some depression. You may be feeling a change in your mood. And the one thought about being in the winter time, it's also more common that people in the Northeast and in the cold states experience SAD, or seasonal affective disorder. The third thing that you can kind of be aware of is that you feel hopeless, or you may have thoughts of suicide or death. This is serious because all of these actually lead up to this one thing. And it is important to, acknowledge that it can be frequent thoughts of suicide. It can be a passing thought. It can be a planned thought. And it is the hopelessness and the worthlessness and the continued social, which can start with social withdrawal and hibernation. That was a habit of mine. And I used to call myself the queen of isolation as a joke to my friends. However, I was suffering in silence. And so this conversation is so important for our community, because there are so many suffering in silence. So many suffering in silence. And with the influx of the impact of COVID, on top of being Black, and the circumstances and situation that we are already disproportionately impacted, we have that on top of that. So as we go into this conversation, please have an open mind, and please see and be honest with your feelings, and ask yourself of how you are feeling. And we'll kind of get into that as we go into the conversation. So that is why we're here. I just wanted to share as to the importance of understanding what seasonal affective disorder is, how it impacts our community, and why it is such an important conversation that we, have this conversation. So that's my viewpoint. So what are you, my sisters? Why is this conversation important for you, and why did you say yes to being a part of it?
Well, Sarah, let me just say the things you brought up about the seasons and the pandemic and all of these things, there also is this other layer to that came about with the pandemic, where people were kind of like bullying people, as far as success is concerned. Where we're in a
Mhm.
pandemic, you have all this time to build your
Good
business,
point.
to read, to do this. You should come out better than you were. But
Hmm.
the pandemic itself was traumatic. It wasn't like we were just sitting at home on a vacation. And
Right.
so sometimes that brings up those feelings of woe because people are like, well, I should be here and I should be doing this and I should have these things. I've had all this time. When in actuality, most of us didn't have all that time.
Hmm.
Some people were dealing with
Powerful.
issues within their
Hmm.
families, with their job, childcare, all kinds of things, going to school online, isolation. So,
Hmm.
on top of that, having that pressure of you should be in a different place,
Hmm. Hmm.
from when you started in the pandemic. I
Hmm.
just
The
wanted to put
judgment.
that there.
Yes. That was such a great point. Says I appreciate that point because it's the not only the criticism from the external,
Mhm.
but it's also the that brings on self-criticism and self-judgment,
Exactly.
which can then put you into a deeper
Exactly.
space of sadness or and isolation and all of the things that attach to it. So excellent point. Thank you for adding that. Yes, that is very
Yes.
important.
Mm. Yeah, thank you, Latina and Sarah. Actually, with the past year, with the COVID and everything that we have experienced, and I know we often say we know that there have been so many lives lost during this time, but I have experienced in my community, in my family, um, I have experienced so many loss, and it has caused some radical change in behavior in my family. Um,
Hmm.
Actually, the loss that I have experienced has been family members have died, and actually there has been family members that has died and not related to
To
COVID.
COVID. Mhm.
And it's been a very sad time. And on top of we stand in and other things that has happened during this, there's been an increase in violence in our
Mhm.
community.
Mhm.
There's not only gun violence, there has been an increase in domestic violence in our homes.
Mhm. Right. You at the
There has
house.
been a lot of that in our own home, and there has
Mhm.
been a lot of violence, like I say, in our community.
Mhm.
And but violence has hit me personally. I mean, really personal over the last year and a half. Not
Mhm.
violent, but the sadness in terms of transition. There was one period in my life that a family member died every month, and it was close
Mhm.
family, very
Mhm.
close. They were very close
Yep.
to me, very close. And so up until this day, I think until last month, I've had a family member to die. Folks at
Mhm.
work always say another funeral. You go into
Mhm.
another funeral. Folks
Mm.
have transitioned. They have transitioned.
Mhm.
Has been a lot. It's been a loss, and the most difficult thing about some of those losses that haven't been able to travel. In our community, one way that we also socialize is that we go to celebration, we go to funerals, and we haven't been able to do that oftentimes. So the
Mhm.
loss of not just being able to bring a closure to our loved one's death, that has been
Yes.
another loss, which has caused a lot of sadness and a lot of grief.
Yes.
And
Yes.
and 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 on top of that, um, we have not just been able to be with each other the way that we would like to, and to
Mhm.
support each other the way that we would really like to, and the way that we know have done that as a family. So this it's and with this time of the year also, as I said earlier, it adds another stress, because we expect a lot of changes this time of year. We expect miracles this time of the year. We expect for things to happen. Those of us, we expect to be with
Mhm.
family. We expect to celebrate the holidays. We expect gifts. We expect for miracles to happen. But that did not happen last year. It did not happen year before last, and chances are it won't happen this year. But
Mhm.
but so that's another stress on families.
Mm-hmm.
In the
Yes.
community, in all community, another
Yes.
stress on families and
Yes.
creates more
Absolutely.
sadness. Yes.
Yes. Absolutely. Did
Yes.
you have something you wanted to add, Latina?
Just in piggybacking on what Viola was saying, the gatherings
Yes.
for services and things, even if you are gathering with your family, the hugs aren't the same. It's more cautious. It's an elbow bump. So the lack of touch is also a big problem in the community, and also dealing with increases in child abuse because people
Yes.
are home,
Mm-hmm.
and also food insecurity because a lot of kids get their meals at school. So all of these things compound into stressful events. So say you're a single mother and you depend on the school to get your kids fed and as and for them to go to school and you can go to work and things like that. But now you have this additional stress of now I have to try to feed them and now I have to find someone to care for them or try to educate them while working from home or working outside of the home. So those are additional stressors that are causing seasonal issues within the community.
Mm-hmm.
Like Viola, myself, I've experienced a lot of transitions. Well, not a lot of
Mhm.
transitions in my families, but the impact of those transitions on my family. Um,
Yes.
just today, this day that we're talking, I just came back from a funeral in Florida. One of my cousins, older cousin, but not that much older, um, made her transition. And it was kind of a shock to not only her immediate family, but the community, small, close knit community, very active in the community, making very much impact in the 3 counties within her community. So now her mom is grieving the loss. So I stayed with my aunt, and her children and grandchildren are experiencing this loss right before Thanksgiving.
Mm-hmm.
A young cousin of mine passed away suddenly. Um, 22, I think 23 years old. My nephew is 22, right near 4th of July. So there's this. Um, you're moving into the holiday season, and now you have to deal with these people who are not there, physically there. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and you're accustomed to a certain way of interacting with them, even during the pandemic. Even if
Mm-hmm.
you didn't see
Exactly.
them physically, you would have virtual conversations or Zoom meetings or group texts and things like that. All the things we put into place to try to maintain the connection, that person won't be a part of that.
Mm-hmm.
And that if you're if you've ever lost anyone, especially a child, it's difficult. It's
Mm-hmm.
difficult, and a lot of people don't understand, and they want to say, "Oh, well, you should just get over it." You don't
Mm-hmm.
just get over it.
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Mm-hmm.
you know. I,
And
I
no,
I
go ahead.
offer to people, and my cousin dropped me off at the airport. It was her mother that made her transition, and I always tell people, don't tell anyone how. Don't let anyone tell you how to grieve
Yes.
or how long to
Yes.
grieve.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
your process. If you want to
Yes.
curse, curse. If you want to cry, cry. If you
Yes.
want to scream, scream. This is your journey, and no
Yes.
one has the right to take that away from
Yes.
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 Absolutely. And I appreciate, the transparency of both of you because, this is real life.
you.
This is happening. It didn't just happen. It just happened, but it's also happening right now.
Hmm.
Because as you both mentioned, as we go into this holiday season, the change is right in front of our faces. And whether it is, like you mentioned, the touch bases, the text messages or the Zoom calls, or being able to go and visit family, it's all change. It's all happening so drastically. One Today is not the same as yesterday. And as all of this continues you know happen so drastically, what the important thing is for understanding is that grief can be caused by any type of change. It
Hmm.
doesn't just have to involve death.
Mhm.
So when you consider what Miss Viola just mentioned, of all of the things are happening, that have happened in her family over the past year and a half, and you think about all of the other She also brought up about the change in the family and how the demise in domestic violence, because everybody working from home. It's everybody pissed off because you home. The children, they mad because they can't talk junk about you, right? We all used to talk junk about our parents. I know I, and you go to school and because your parents gonna put you on punishment, or you done got fussed out about something for not doing the dishes or whatever. At school, you bad. She get on my nerves. She had the nerve. You can't. The kids don't even have time to be kids no more, right?
You're
Because
right.
they
That's
parent in the
right.
other room.
Yes.
They can't even be
Yes.
acting like they fussing.
Yes.
And the parent got
Yes.
the code on the phone, so the text messages go through the phone. They can't even cuss their parents out in text messages to their friends. We all had cussed our parents out and tried to be cute and talk about how we was doing whatever. And lo and behold, we just got the smack down and had to go to bed, right? But the kids can't even make those stories up. Everybody mad. So of course there's gonna be a rise in domestic violence and all those the things of having the concern about their children eating. The point that Latina brought up, right? The increase, right? Because some and some of our community are on a fixed budget, right? And even if you're not on a fixed budget, it's still increased food that you have to pay for. Because how many of us worked in corporate America and got free meals,
Yes.
right? And because you knew that you had meetings or whatever, so you ain't had to buy lunch for certain times, and you might not even had to buy breakfast or dinner, depending on the type of work that you do. And you had, I would have company, meetings and stuff like that. Working as a consultant, the consultant they pay for everything, right? So there's a lot that we all have had to increase as far as finances and different things. The impact, the change is so
Yes.
apparent and is constant.
Yes.
So as we go into the holiday season and all of this change is happening, Latina, you mentioned a few of the tragic events that your family has experienced. And we have all been praying for you both and praying for you and lifting you in prayer and being in checking in when we don't hear from each other, or just checking it out and just making sure that each of us are making sure that you're good. AP, I call it AP because you might kind of be in front, y'all. But so if you hear me say AP, that's what that means. So I just check in and she'll check in. And it's just a time that we have to check in, and not out of obligation, but because we care.
Yes.
Yes.
And as you go into this holiday season, the most important holiday coming up this week, that of being your birthday.
What's going
So
on?
you're hello. As that day comes up, and then we have the Thanksgiving holiday and it's family time, and then going into the holiday season and family time, where I know you travel back to Chicago and visit family.
Right.
How will this year be different for you?
Well, this year, with the transition of my cousin, that impacts the change on my birthday, of course. Well, not of course, but it will impact it, because the plans I had for my birthday and Thanksgiving will need to be adjusted. I have not solidified what that will look like just yet, but
We on standby though.
well, we're on standby. So even with that, not really wanting to have a big blowout or multi-day event like I typically do. Um, a lot of times I like to just kind of reflect. Um, and even just this year, the changes that I've made, I've already begun um, to work on my financial goals for the next year, setting my budget up for next year, and deciding what kind of things I'm going to do as far as connecting with others, whether it's conferences and things like that. So that's a big change that I've made this year, and not waiting until December to do that. Um, but yeah, it's just having more fun. But the fun
Mhm.
looks different, smaller
Yeah,
groups,
yeah, yeah.
um, maybe something in the home, things like that. So just just adjusting in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
Thanksgiving, not sure what I'm going to do about that, whether I will go to Chicago or if I'll do a Friendsgiving here in Maryland where I am. So things will look different. Not sure what that looks like, but I'm open to whatever will feed my soul and cause me to have great joy. So,
Yeah, yeah. That's the important thing is,
Yeah.
to bringing that joy in, right? Because that is, at the time of grief, grief is the absence of joy.
mhm,
Yes.
So as the more, joy you can bring, it not doesn't dispel or push aside what you may be experiencing, but is allowing you to experience life in the living and in the now. And as you, have, had to travel and gone to, to family and, all of the various different ways in which that you know, are, meeting with people, even at work, are there any ways that you have had to adjust or that you become aware of for yourself to set boundaries with other people as you have been, having this experience, Latina? Are there any ways that you've had to, to set any boundaries? And then, in alignment with that question, what are those self-honoring choices that you make for yourself to support you not only during this time, but in times in which that you have to say, hey, I honor the fact of where I'm at. Can you
mhm.
kind of shed some light on that?
Whew, that's a multi-level question.
So you can go with the set boundaries first.
Being that I work in an industry that never closed and was in person all the times, setting boundaries was very important. Everybody has their views about mask or not mask and social distance versus not social distance, and having clear boundaries of what I would accept in my space was very important. If someone were to come into my space and they have their mask on as a chin guard, I immediately, tell them to put their
Hmm.
mask up, because not only for my health, but I come into contact with people who have compromised immune systems and things like that, and I did not want to
Hmm.
bring any risk to them. So setting those boundaries, those physical boundaries, with people is very important. Sarah knows about an incident I recently had at work with a team member that reports to me who was in grief, um, in a grief situation with the anniversary of a family member's death. And they kind of um, attacked me in a way, verbally, and
Kinda.
and made a they made a gesture that was threatening to me.
Hmm.
And
Exactly.
the reason why it was important that I report this was because I needed to set a boundary for myself. And I also needed to set a boundary for the team members that were in the room. Many of them were female, and they had experiences with this person doing this to them, or they've witnessed this happening to other people in their presence.
Hmm.
So I was a little hesitant about going, because when you have those type of situations, as women, we typically have to defend ourselves.
Hmm.
Um,
Can you
and
pause for 1 second? Because I just want to highlight something that you said.
mhm,
What Latina just said was it was threatening to her.
mhm,
It didn't matter if the person felt that they were threatening. It didn't matter if her coworker, the boss, or whomever felt that it was threatening.
mhm,
No. What the key point that I want to zero in on is the fact that she highlighted and said she set the boundary because his action was threatening to her. And that is how she honored herself by setting that boundary. Continue. I just wanted to highlight that because we tend to put ourselves to the side and say, well, they said that they didn't mean it that way. No,
right.
it was threatening to you. Continue. Sorry about that.
Exactly. And so, in reporting that, not sure what has happened because I've been out of work, but also this isn't a new behavior for this person. And also working with my boundaries, I had to really go have this conversation with myself and with Sarah about how I was feeling,
Mhm.
because when those type of things happen, it's typical for someone like myself to want to justify their behavior or protect. He was a black male, so we want to protect our black men because society is so hard on them. That's true. However, I'm a black woman and I deserve to be protected as well. So setting that boundary was tremendous for me. Um, Not necessarily easy, but it was a great step towards my healing and being
Mhm.
able to set strong, firm boundaries um, regarding my person. So
Mhm.
that's one boundary I had to set. The mask was another. Also, clearing my space when people come in and out, just cleansing myself of any of the energies that they're bringing to me. I may use sage, the spray sage or Florida water to do that. So those are also boundaries for myself. Like people
Mhm.
may not see them as boundaries, but that's a boundary for me. Making sure
Excellent.
that I am, when I come home, um, I may journal a little bit about my day, release some of the anxiety or the joy, whatever it is, just kind of
Mhm.
recording my day and taking that off of me, setting a boundary for me to have great rest.
Mhm.
So these are some tools that I use to make sure that I am expressing at my highest level as
Mhm.
often as possible. I'm sure
Mhm.
some more things will come to me as we go along, but
Yeah.
I'll just end with that.
Excellent. Excellent. Those are all great points because what you were your what you highlighted was not only the internal, right, protection and boundaries and the cleansing in which that you do, but also the importance of the external as well, clearing the energies with the spray and all of that and cleansing your space. So those were all important points. And one another point that I wanted to highlight was the situation that Latina brought up was regarding someone else who was experiencing grief,
Mhm,
right?
mhm,
So, how someone else experiences grief and how what they're going through, you have compassion for them. However, it does not give them the right to mistreat you. So, keep that in mind as you maneuver through situations and circumstances throughout the year, that
mhm,
people don't get a pass just because they're going through something. They don't get to mistreat you. You can understand their mood, you can be compassionate, pray for them. However, where there is a behavior that is threatening to you, there's a need to set a boundary. And the boundaries that Latina says that you just highlighted were phenomenal because it wasn't as if you had to be in the defense and go here or whatever, but it was a way in which that was like, no, you don't get to treat me that way.
right,
And even in a respectful way, because he is an elder, you respected him as well as you respected him as a black man.
mhm,
But you also, first of all, had to respect yourself. Because as we know, the black woman is the most disrespected person on this earth. So as you set that boundary, you allowed not only for yourself, but for your little people too, right? Standing up and making a decision. Like you said, it wasn't something that you normally would do.
mhm,
So that's what we want to bring up is there are our behavior, our normal behaviors.
right,
Those may not be self honoring. They may not be, allowing us to be our highest and greatest good. So
mhm,
that's what this conversation we kind of want to bring to our takeaways of what will support us in being and honoring who we are.
mhm,
And as we have this, we talk about the change that is happening, as Miss Viola had mentioned earlier, the amount of change. I know that you come from a very big family and your family is tight, you know and that everything is built on that family, right? And it's a very firm foundation that was, that your parents, have left behind, and you guys carrying on the legacy of what family is. and to have had the experiences and continue to have the experience of I mean, I remember there was like 2 or 3 that happened in a month in the past year and a half. To have a family member transition every month, sometimes 2 or 3,
Yes.
even as close as her brother, with all of this change happening, sis. As this holiday season approaches, and all that you have considering, how will this impact your family? Has it impacted your family in the way that you interact? Has it shifted that tradition in any way?
Thank you for asking, Sarah, and acknowledging the fact that I have had some losses, and thank you, Latina, because first of all, I just acknowledging the fact that we all grieve so differently, so differently, so differently, and acknowledging the fact that not only my family, but there are so many out there in the community that experiencing this, and also with our clients, they experience it in their families. We all experience it in different ways. So what has happened for us in our family this year is that, we're spending more time talking to each other on Zoom. We're spending more time, we talk to each other every day now, twice a day. We have a conference line set up.
Yes.
That we talk every day. And then we have a prayer line set up that we pray. We pray. That's what we do. We come from a big family, a spiritual family. Our roots are deep.
Yes.
And we're fortunate and we're blessed to have that. But we also know that we've had to shift. We've had to shift so many times this year. One of my brothers, he lost two of his daughters transition in less than 6 weeks. So every time someone transitions, we have to shift again, and we have to shift in ways that are different for each one of us. We have to shift in ways that we still honor ourselves, and even in our family, we still set boundaries with each other. We've had a lot of boundary setting this year, even with each other, and even in our homes, and even when we meet each other. Boundaries in terms of just trying to stay physical and emotionally and spiritually and mentally healthy ourselves. But what we do know for sure is that what gets us through all of this is our relationship that we have with our higher power, and our relationship that we have with each other. And we also we value our relationship, but we have a whole new generation, a generation that we're role models to and for. Yeah. So we have to keep that. We have to keep that going, and realizing that change is a part of life. Transition is a part of life. Grief is a part of life. All of that is a part of life. So we support each other more. And we're more compassionate, not just to the family, to each other, but to the community. And we embrace that.
Absolutely. Excellent.
We do. We embrace
that is so beautiful, because it's just what our community is about, right? As Black people, we're not an individualistic group. We're a communal group, and your family so very is such a good example of that. And how, even if, with coming together, you talk every day. I was glad that you mentioned about that prayer call, because I know that has been very supportive, with your family. So as you utilize these various different ways in supporting your family, as a mental health professional, sometimes you are the last on the list, right? For yourself, I'd like to first ask you, how have, you mentioned about how you have been able to support your family, right? In, the shifting and the prayer call and the Zoom and all of the conversations. And I know that you travel and go support, right? You will go and you will hop on a plane and you will go see your family member, whether it be your sister, whether it be your niece, whomever it is, you will be on that plane. And, as you support everyone, I'd like to, ask, what is it that you do for yourself that is supportive during this massive time of change? Because I know you're a goer and you will go and support everyone in every way possible. But I'd like to know how you support yourself, because there are tons of mental health professionals out here. So what is it that you do for yourself that supports you during this time?
Thank you. Well, professionally, I think I support myself by setting limits with my clients, with my coworkers, setting boundaries, and knowing when it's time to say, I need to take a break. And that's a challenge for me. That's a struggle for me, because oftentimes I don't know how to take a break.
No, you don't.
Sarah will call me. She said, "Were you at work?" "Yeah, I'm at work again." Latina, "Yes, I'm at work again." But
I need you to go home.
Yes, yeah, you just need. But it is also a way for me to help take care of the community. And what I do, actually, in a way, it gives back to the community. It helps me. But I'm finding that I set boundaries, and I'm much better with that.
Sure.
But I also know that there are clients, that there's a whole community out there that really, and not only with me, but for my coworkers. And I'm saying this, that I need to have compassionate, because so many times the clients out there, they have absolutely no one. Of course, I'm not responsible for that, but I'm finding that if I can give a little more, that's my way of giving back. I'm also aware that when I take time for myself, that it does help me. I take time for myself. I journal. I meditate. I'm also a Reiki teacher, not a teacher, but I'm also a Reiki. I'm a master, and I do Reiki. I do, and others do Reiki for me, and that's the way I take care of myself. Meditation is really great, and it's so powerful. Meditation is so powerful for me, in prayer and journaling. But and I also I like to do. I love water. I love water. Water is so cleansing, and I love sage in my home, and I just love relaxing. I love relaxing with my pets. I love relaxing with my family, and I just love friends and talking, having conversation with friends and family. That helps me. It helps me. And it also helped me to know that physical exercises help. It does. Our diet, just eating habits, knowing what to do and how to do it. And that helps. And emotionally, and just emotionally and mentally, just taking time for myself. Actually, this time of the year is a beautiful time for me. Just a beautiful time for me. Just experiencing the life outside. That's beautiful. But I also think that what's really important to me is just acknowledging the fact that I can't do it all. I'm not supposed to do it all. Yes, and giving myself permission to just be. Giving myself permission to just be.
Very powerful.
Just be. So thank you for asking that. Sometimes I don't think about how I take care of myself,
Yeah, well, it's important. We have to take care of ourselves, right?
Yes, we do. We do have to take care of ourselves, and sometimes we as sisters and as family, we need to remind each other that we do need to take care of ourselves.
Yes,
we do need to. Yes.
And that's one of the honor and the privilege of having me both here, because we do that for each other, right?
Yes.
And even we may not want to hear it, we still do it, right? We still show up, right?
Yes.
As Mom always says, always be coaching ABC, right? So we do that for each other, and we also know when just to listen.
Yeah.
Right. We also know when to just listen. And you both have really shared really amazing habits that you have, that sustain you, that bring you to this now moment to be able to share your experience, and also allow it to for and honor yourselves in having that experience. So those habits that are daily sustaining you. You both mentioned journaling, you mentioned meditation, you mentioned saging and cleansing, Florida water. You mentioned sage. Ms. Viola and Latina, she mentioned Florida water, and spray, using the sage spray in her office.
Yes.
Keeping that energy clear no matter where we are. When I walk through my door, I got a little command kit right by my door. There's some spray I spray in myself, soon as I walk in the door, you know what I mean?
Yes.
And
Yes.
some hand sanitizer,
Yes.
to hit my hands before I can get to the sink, So, there's a way in which that cleansing your energy and being able to do all of those daily things, the journaling, the meditation, Viola, you mentioned exercise, daily exercise. Y'all know I'm a walking queen. I will walk
Yes, you are.
I'll be out there walking in them streets, but I have to do it every day. And even though, more recently, when the good old asthma might show up, I will go out and just even on my balcony and just get some fresh air, and even just take a 5 or 10 minute walk and break that that 6 miles that I do each day, have to break it up in just like 5 or 10 minutes here and there or whatever. It's still important for me to connect with and being outside. Those are the daily habits. Creating a daily habit for yourself is what will sustain during these times of seasonal woes. And as we all know, we are our first client, right? That's one of the key things that we learned in our spiritual life coaching program, is that we are our first client. And in these moments of sadness where we all have experienced grief, and we've all experienced change and all of the things that we have, how have you coached yourself in those moments to even sometimes ask for support or pick up the phone and say, hey, I got this thing going on, or to be able to get to the point, say, where Latina may share with me what's happening, where she had to put the boundary up and we had to have that conversation. Viola, we each, all of us, we talk about various different situations, but there's something that happens before you get to that point. What does that look like for you? How do you get to the point? How do you coach yourself to get to that point of asking for support?
Actually, for me, I acknowledge the fact. I just acknowledge that I'm in a space. I'm in a space right now. I need some support. And that support might come in the way of a phone call to Sarah, my praying partner, Latina, a family member. It might come in the form of a phone call. It might come in a way just journaling, meditating. It might come in a way just a good cry in a fetal position. It comes in all types of ways.
Yeah.
All types of ways.
Yeah,
All
absolutely.
types of ways. Yes, it does for me. Yes.
Excellent. Excellent.
Yes.
Latina, anything to add?
What Ms. Viola said, basically listening is a skill, and listening to yourself
Is a
is
master
a very
skill.
important skill.
Yes.
And sometimes, we keep moving and going and doing and doing and doing, and then you get still and you hear what you need to do next. For example, you talk about routines. I have a checklist, and for myself, the checklist is important for me to stay consistent. And once you're consistent with your routines, your prayer, your meditation, whatever that is, your exercise, it becomes second nature. And when you
Yes.
don't do it, you can
Yes.
feel the difference. You can see
Yes.
things changing. And if you listen with your eyes, you can see, oh, I've skipped 3 days of exercising. I feel different. Let me start that again. Another routine I have,
Yes.
like Miss Viola said, you reach
Yes.
out, you talk to people, have a
Mm-hmm.
good cry. when I'm driving from Maryland to Illinois, what routine do I have? Miss Viola, can you tell them one of the parts of my routine on that drive?
You tell one and I can tell one too.
What is that?
Well, it's silent and listening to music.
Hmm. And who do I call?
And who does
You
she
do.
call?
Yes, yes,
Or
yes.
stop and
You
see along the way.
yes, right, right. She does. She always call, and I know that when she's on her way traveling. So yes. So that's the beauty of it, because you know what you need. You know what you need. We
Hmm.
always know what we need, and at the
Hmm.
time that we need it. So
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Latina, yes, she always, and like you say, it's stopping along the way. We're made. We have made it. Well, what we've said, well, we're gonna stop. There was one time just when things was really not good out there. We were gonna meet someplace.
Yeah.
We were gonna meet. We were gonna
Yeah.
meet.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yes,
We had to
yes,
postpone
yes,
that.
yes,
Thank you both for that. Yes,
Yes,
so having a
absolutely.
routine, listening to yourself, and just hearing what the directions are. One of the boundaries that I had to set was changing my work schedule. I noticed that I needed more time off, so I went
Mhm.
in and said, "Hey, this is the schedule that I want to work," and they said, "Okay, great." I said, "For my sanity, I need this." And
Yes, for your own sanity.
great. So
yes,
sometimes people say, "How do you work at that company and have so many perks and so much time off or whatever?" And I just ask, I listen, and I ask,
yes,
you know,
yes,
Ask for what you want.
yes, yes,
and
yes,
it works out, and
yes,
sometimes
Absolutely.
I
Absolutely.
accept it. You know?
Yeah, yeah. And that's the part is asking for what you want, right?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
for
And need.
myself, you said
Go ahead.
and need, yes, yes, what you want and need. And what one thing that I know for myself that I've had to do, and you kind of mentioned, you kind of touched on it, both of you, is in those moments of sadness, because I am a doer, well, cancer, because I had a previous behavior of doing
yes.
and being an extreme doer,
It's
the
definitely.
way definitely an extreme doer, and what I've had to learn to become is to be,
Yes,
right? Because
yes,
we are human
yes,
beings, right?
yes,
Human beings, not human doings. We are human beings. So I've had to learn to be still, because in the doingness, it allows me the grand and honor and privilege to suppress my feelings and to run from them. However, with being, it allows me to actually understand how I feel,
Mhm.
to take a moment and just honor what I feel in that moment,
yes.
which has been the greatest support for me in actually releasing the seasonal affective disorder that I experienced for so long.
Mhm. Amen.
And as that beingness is just continuing to grow for me. And you know, how I sometimes have to get the attention where I understand that I might be doing a little too much is that asthma might flare and will force me to sit down,
Mhm.
right?
Yes,
Because with anything with the lungs, uh, you know, disease, is a physical manifestation of emotional and feelings, right? And anything with the lungs is grief.
yes,
The sheer sign of grief, that is where you hold in the body. So whenever that asthma flares up, right, it's a understanding of what I am feeling in that moment and what I am feeling, and is it something that I'm denying to be true for myself?
Mhm.
So I just have to sit down. I just have to be still. And like Latina said, it allows you to listen
Mhm.
and to hear. So that's what I do. And I mentioned the program that we used, that we were in, as the Inner Visions Institute of Spiritual Development. And our faculty, Coach Mack, our directors, Coach Mack and Coach Jackie poured, and as well as, our mamas poured a lot of energy into us. And as we supported each other on that journey, what would you say is one learning from that experience that you to this day utilize to support you during times of challenging times, during times of change? What is one thing that you could say that you learned from that experience that you use, say, on a daily basis to this day? I know it's probably a lot, but just give me one main specific one.
For me, it's just being present with me and just really just knowing who I am, listening to myself, listening to my inner voice, listening, just listening and just being present. And affirmation is really works for me in my daily, they really work for me. Affirmation, yes.
Awesome.
Like you say, there are many.
There's so many, right? That's why it's like just one, because But I love what you just shared as regards to being present.
Yes.
And also affirmation. That was two. I'll give you a slide on
All right. Okay. All right.
Latina?
One of the things that I learned and that the coaching program reinforced, I learned years ago about things coming to teach you.
Yes.
There's a lesson in it. So, and that's kind of a grown-up kind of spirituality thing, So the program reinforces and helps me to remember that, even though I learned it years ago. Sometimes you have to go back and hear something. We learn by rote, so repeat. So when a situation occurs, what did this come to teach me?
Yes.
The situation with the person at work. What did it come to teach me? It came to teach me how to stand up for myself. It came to teach me to stand in my power. It came to teach me how to be the light when others are walking in darkness. So sometimes it's a very simple and subtle message, but very powerful. So what did this come to teach me? And then to take it further in your maturity is to accept the lesson and move forward.
Absolutely.
Yes.
That part.
Yes.
All of them parts that you both just said. Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
What is the lesson in this? Right?
Yes.
Because that moves from victim to victor consciousness, right?
Exactly.
So that is, so powerful, because those are things that bring me to this now moment, right? That I utilize daily, right? So y'all gave my answers too, but there's one that really was, that brings me to this community, and why the conversations that I have are so important. I got a lesson in community. Our lovely Washington, D.C. incident, right? What that taught me was how I show up in the community, how I show up, my energy impacts the entire community. And even though I actually had to sprain my foot and, my whole situation during that time, I didn't have anything verbally that I said. But the energy that supported, that contributed to the disruption that we experienced in that experience, was the fact that I held how I felt, because internally we had an assignment, and I felt that because I had at the time when I had a sprained foot, a sprained ankle, and a bruised up knee. And I felt that the physical activity that it would required of us to fulfill our assignment, that I would hold everybody back. I never verbalized it. I didn't verbalize it because I didn't feel like I was enough at the time, that it mattered. And that's something that I always would tell myself, being the youngest of 8, 10, but I grew up with 8, right? Being the youngest girl, 6 brothers, growing up in a household. My sister was the oldest, so she was married by the time I was 5, and I grew up. I had 6 older brothers. The oldest boy didn't live at home, but the 5 I lived in the same household with. So many times I had many feelings of not feeling like enough. So I brought that energy to the community and I didn't communicate it. So that was the energy that I contributed to the disruption of where we weren't able to fulfill the assignment, that whole situation. But that was the energy that I contributed that taught me about community. That taught me that even though when there's family situations going on and I'm the youngest, I deserve to use my voice. I don't have to sit down and shut up and let the older ones figure it out. No, my voice matters. So it allowed me to see how I show up in the community, whether it's in my family community, whether it's in the community in which I live, which is the community that I work, whether it's just the Black community in just in general purposes. How I show up in the community contributes to the energy that impacts the greater community. So my commitment is to show up to support and elevate the energy in every community in which I am a part of. Because I feel that in every space, that energy will ripple. It will be a ripple effect.
Yes.
So that is the underlying basis of how this conversation has shifted to a community conversation to support and moving the needle forward to the healing and whole wellness of the people of African diaspora. Because it is in these conversations that it doesn't matter if it's just one person that listens. The energy that we are putting out of healing is going to have a ripple effect and will impact not only our immediate community, but it will impact the global community of people of African diaspora, which is my concern and which is my honor to serve. So that is what that lesson that I learned in that moment brings this conversation possible. Because it was in that moment that I understood community, because I never had one. So now I have a community that if I am in those moments where I might backslide into queen isolation, I know that my accountability partner, I know that my prayer partner, I know that that my sisters that I went through my program, if nobody else contacts me, one of those 16 will.
Yeah.
Because that is what we as a community have committed to. So I take that and just, as we, kind of look at how we contribute to the vibrational energy of the community, whether it's in our direct community or it's in our global community. Thinking about how we show up will either allow us to complete the assignment, renegotiate the assignment.
Where that came from.
Or have an assignment that is incomplete.
Yes.
How we show up will determine the outcome.
Yeah.
And, as we, think about this vibrational energy and how we show up. Latina, when you think about this, why do you feel like it's important to be consciously aware and compassionate during family gatherings and family outings, not only during this time of year, but just in general purposes?
As you were speaking, I kind of had a question.
Sure.
About when we're, as light workers and people who are very clear about our energy and purpose and in spaces, how we support others who are having these awakenings or grief or whatever, um, how we show up and also protect ourselves at the same time. So having
Mm-hmm.
empathy while also supporting ourselves and what we need to do. Um, that's kind of a question that I had for you all, which kind
Mm-hmm.
of piggybacks on the question that you have for us.
Sure.
It's a very delicate balance, and depending on your family and who is at the table or in the room at the time, your support could be welcome
Mm-hmm.
or it could be invited to leave the room. So basically, not taking it personal, knowing what I'm here to do and being okay with that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, for myself, just like Sarah, I'm the youngest in my family. And sometimes we feel like I felt like I needed to be silent, let the elders speak, whatever the case may be. Not
Mm-hmm.
that that was said,
Mm-hmm.
but
Yeah.
I
Right.
also
Exactly. It's just
realized,
understood. It's just
yeah,
understood.
Yes.
it's
Yes.
understood. But now looking back, knowing that we have this innate wisdom within us, and knowing that sometimes the most profound things come from the youngest people,
Yes.
you know?
From the mouths of babes. You know
Yeah.
that saying.
Yes, we're very open. So supporting ourselves and being empathetic to the situation, but not having to jump into the trench or the mud with others.
Yes.
You can have compassion and empathy, but also know how much you need, how much support you need for yourself. You
Mm-hmm.
don't want to, you can't pour from an empty cup.
Nope.
So the things we talked about, the prayer, the meditation, the saging, the time, the eating, the workouts, all of that stuff is filling our cup so that when we go into communities, we go into our families and we go into situations, we have something to give from. We're not depleting ourselves because that doesn't do anything for them or for us.
Mm-mm.
So I think I answered the question. I would
Mm-hmm.
like to.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You have. You have. And did you want us to answer your question?
Sure. Yes.
In certain in situations, where I have to, I just am mindful of listening, paying attention to body movements, right? And also honoring my audience, respecting their experience,
Mhm.
respecting their beliefs, and not feeling like I have to be right or prove anything.
Mhm.
So I had to shift from feeling like, right, see me, I mean, I have something to say too, right? To just being still, going back to the being, right? Because all of this is doing, right? Trying to do and be seen. However, listening and offering what comes up as an offering, because at times, I would just be, trying to talk and prove my point.
Mhm.
But now I've learned to listen by being still while honoring myself. I honor the audience in which I'm in front of.
Wow.
And then if it requires a response, an action, or something, then I do. And that includes taking my leave.
Amen.
Thank you.
Yes, that's great.
Miss
The reason
Viola?
why,
Thank
because
you.
I
Oh,
know
go ahead.
there's doers out there, and there's,
Yes.
you know,
Good
we want to
question.
be there for people. So that's why I was asking you all that question. Go ahead, Miss
Absolutely. That's an
Viola.
excellent question, because those things do come up. We might, have something to say. Miss Viola?
Yeah, Latina, I apologize. What was the question? Repeat the question again.
How do we honor ourselves in when we're in spaces because people are calling on us to do things, be certain things?
Yes.
How do we empathize, ooh, tongue tie with them, but also protect ourselves.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for that question. It's knowing, for me, it's just knowing who I am. There have been a time in my life that I would say yes
Mm.
when someone asked if there's
But you meant
something
no.
that, yeah, can you do this? Can you do that? I was the gopher. I'm running over here, and like, yes. I no longer. I have learned, and I'm learning more how to support myself, how to be
Mhm,
kind and compassionate for my to myself
mhm, mhm.
by saying I ca- I I'm not going to support you in this. Sometimes it's just acknowledging the fact that saying no, I'm not going to.
Mhm.
But more powerful than anything else for me, what is so powerful, it's just acknowledging the fact that where I am at this moment in time.
Mhm.
Yes.
And
Yes.
sometimes when I'm asked to do certain things, not to be disrespectful, sometimes silence is so great. Is so powerful.
The most powerful thing, silence or your absence.
Yes.
Silence or your absence, right?
Yes, yes, yes. And it feels great. It feels
It
great. It
does.
feels
It
great.
does.
It's
It does.
limits, boundaries. Yes,
Yes.
yes, yes.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
thank you. Thank you, Latina, for
Uh-huh.
asking that. Yes.
Yeah.
And thank you, Sarah. Yeah. Yeah.
That was a very good question, because something else I
Yes.
also would like to add that I do. I have actually
Yes.
a morning routine that I do, right? That
Yes.
of the blessing of my head, right? Because that
Yes.
allows me, to be centered, right? And I really fear if I didn't bless my head, what might come out my mouth. But so just in my daily routine,
Yes.
right? I have certain practices that I do. I read, Psalm 91, reading that three times
Mhm.
can put a
Yes.
shield of protection around you and over you.
Yes.
So that, in circumstances, situations,
Yes.
there is nothing that, may impede, right? So there are certain practices that I do on a daily basis before I even get into those situations
Yes.
Yes.
that actually brings me and allows me to show up and learn and listen, right? Because I prepared myself that morning. Even though I may not, I prepared myself for the day that morning in my practice that I do in the morning for the day. So by doing that practice, it allows me to be present in each situation, you know, that I may be called to be into, to then be able to listen and be able to hear the instruction that I'm to do it, so that I may show up and not
Yes.
only honor myself, but also show up and be able to support in the in the
Mhm.
circumstance or situation that I've been called to support, and to be able to keep my energy high, as well as support those in elevating the energy in which that I am present. So it starts with my morning practice,
Yes.
and then of course, quite a few prayers before going into the situation, and all the intentions and all that stuff, excuse me, and having an intention, as to why it isn't going down in there, keeping that, in mind of vision, intention, and prayer, right? Being able to go into the situation, being able to see what it is that I would like to experience in that situation. And I've done that in several situations with my family, and it has been very supportive. Um, it's
Yes.
been very supportive
Yes.
for me,
Yes.
right? In
Yes.
being able to navigate things in the family position that I'm in. So that's a very good question. Thank you for asking that. Excuse me.
No, thank you.
Excuse me. So as we continue kind of moving toward the ending of this conversation, you know, as I mentioned earlier, and you mentioned earlier, Miss Viola, about, you know, you mental health, as a mental health professionals, there's so many different things that you see, not only just that you experience in your family, but how you support the community, how you show up in the community, in all of those ways in which that you that you experience, and that of how you serve, right? Why do you feel like it's important for for you, as well as a mental health professional, to practice self-compassion during times of change. Oh, I got a situation over here. Excuse me.
Thank you, Sarah, for asking that.
Mm-hmm.
We're sisters and brothers on this planet. And compassion. It's important to have compassion because it decreases anxiety, depression. It gives us a feeling that someone cares. It helps to support us when we're compassionate. And for the clients in the community that I serve, it does. And it not only helps them individually, because when we help one, we help another. And it helps our whole community, our whole society, our whole country. Because compassionate is a way that we can show love, and we can show that we do care, and that we're here for each other. It's like I'm a brother's keeper in a way. So compassionate, and that's what I teach all the time. Teaching, that's what I speak about, compassion. Because sometimes we had to live in a community. It's like you said earlier, Sarah. There's such a stigma out there with folks that are struggling with mental illness, with addiction, you know, and and um and sometimes we forget that they really need compassion, and they need taken care of, and they need supported. And that's why every opportunity that I get, I offer that, I ask that of my community. In every way I asked it, even where in my agency I ask that sometimes. Yeah, because sometimes we forget.
Yes.
I ask that of our the folks in the spiritual community. I ask that. So it's important. Yes, it's important, really important. So
Yes.
thank you for asking that, Sarah.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing those points. Are there any, I know you mentioned some of the habits and things in your daily habits that you mentioned, and, of how you, pour into the community, your community directly in your agency and in the Black community in general, and all of the clients and things that you support. Are there any specific tips that you may like to additionally that you may offer to mental health professionals that
Yes.
to be able to support themselves? Is there anything else that you'd like to add?
Yeah, to support themselves, is just to have compassion, and just to be able to know themselves well enough to know that we call it burnout. First, know thyself. First, heal thyself. Because in order for you to go out and try to help someone or support someone else, you first need to know yourself. But not only in knowing yourself, you need to know that there are certain things that you cannot do. There are certain things that we just can't do as professionals, but also to advocate for yourself, advocate for your clients, advocate for your community, and just be there to support. And just also know how to take care of yourself. Take care of yourself. And for my clients and for the clients out there, I really ask them to have compassion for themselves, and actually not to be so hard on ourselves. Be kind to ourselves.
Yes.
Just to be kind. Be kind. No matter where you are in life, just be kind. Be kind. And show compassion first for yourself. That way you can spread it throughout the community for yourself.
Awesome.
Yeah, so thank you, Sarah. Thank you. Thank you for
Of
this
course. Thank
opportunity.
you. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate you both showing up.
Thank you.
And as we wrap this conversation, what is one thought that you would like the audience to take away related to today's conversation? What's one thought?
That they're not alone.
Yes. Yes.
There's community out there, whether you find it online, be, search for your community. YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, whatever you need, there's an avenue to get it. So
Absolutely.
you're not alone. There's numbers you can call. There's people you can reach out to. There's people in your life who are waiting for you to call.
Yes.
Yes.
and they're open and just waiting for
Yes.
you to reach out.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
They may not know that you
Mm-hmm.
need assistance, but when
Mm-hmm.
you reach out, they're there. They're there. So
Yes.
you're not alone.
Thank
Excellent.
you, Latina. That's
Thank you, Latina.
wonderful. Yes, that's
Miss
wonderful.
Viola?
Excellent. Yes, that they're not alone. There are numbers out there and there's support out there. And actually, I would just, for me, I would just I ask this of myself just to continue to look for ways that I can support others. Look for ways during the holiday season, just any day of the week. It doesn't have to be the holiday season. We know those that have lost loved ones. We know that those that are grieving. We know those that don't have anyone. We just pick up the phone, or maybe just stop by, set a basket. I mean, put a basket on the push, just to know that we care, to know that we
Mhm.
care, and just to offer, you know, a telephone call. But there are numbers out there, there are folks out there that they are waiting, and
Mhm.
just to kind of help to just look after each other, look out for
Mhm.
each other, look out for each other, look
Mhm.
out for each other. Yes,
Mhm.
yes. So
Sarah,
Very
can I
nice. Thank
yes,
you for that.
yes.
can
Thank
I add a
you.
couple of
Yes.
things that are like
Sure.
um, I guess technical things. Um, I know a few friends who do have seasonal affective disorder, and a lot of times it's the if you're in the Midwest, you need daylight, so they buy full spectrum lights, daylight light bulbs and things like that. We talk a lot about journaling. Some people might be new to journaling. You can get a one sentence journal just to get you started, something like that. Vitamin D, there's
Mhm.
some, I guess you call them technical things you can do to support yourself in
Mhm.
these situations. Sometimes you're new to affirmations or meditations and things like that. So you can start small. There's no judgment.
Mhm.
There's no judgment. But look into things that'll support you and not isolating
Yes.
and making sure you're getting the exercise. Just taking a few steps.
Mhm.
Supporting volunteering to
Mhm.
serve meals
Yes.
or to
Yes.
support other communities will help you to see that you are needed, that you're not alone. So these are some technical things you can do to support yourself. I just wanted to put that out there.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Latina.
Absolutely.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for that.
Wonderful. That is volunteer. Just doing that. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. Those are
Thank you.
very good technical
Yes.
tips that you can,
Yes.
practice. Many times
Mhm.
there's food giveaways. There's different ways
Yes.
that,
Yes.
I personally like enjoy going to soup kitchens.
Mhm.
I not only just like to go to soup kitchens to serve, but I like to talk to those
Yes.
who I am serving
Yes.
because
Mhm.
those are the biggest lessons.
Yes.
Those are the
Yes.
biggest blessings that
Mhm.
you get. So, a lot of times it doesn't just have to be the holidays, Thanksgiving, Christmas that you serve. I like to, one of my practices is when I'm out, if, there's a certain area here not too far from where I live, at the train station, right? I'll take lunch because I know that there are, some of our displaced brothers and sisters out there.
Yes.
And I'll just give them lunch.
Yes.
And it doesn't have to be a holiday for me to do that. It's just a
Yes.
practice that I like to do.
Mhm.
So it could just be a practice for people to just show up how you do. Miss Viola mentioned about phone numbers, calling those in your phone. What
Mhm.
about your auntie? Yeah, yeah, you may have an auntie that's older, or you got a play auntie, right?
Mm-hmm.
You got the aunties that my mother. She's an only child, but I grew up with aunties and didn't realize till I was grown. Like, wait a minute, I thought that was her sister. That is her sister, but it ain't her
Right.
sister, right?
Right.
So, what about those aunties that picked you up from school when you was a kid?
Mm-hmm. Or from the
Check
neighborhood,
in on them from the
Right.
neighborhood,
the
Mhm.
right?
church, or the community
Mhm.
center.
I know like a lot of the older women in the area that I grew up in the projects I grew up in Jersey, have transitioned since. But we had the Miss Susie's who sold the icy, you know what I mean? And we appreciate it and we go over there. She's no longer with us. But what about those women or those men who protected you when you was younger. If you were able to reach out to them through social media and just say thank you,
Right.
just let them know that they matter. Because as we get older, sometimes those phone calls stop. And as our elders continue to get older, and their friends and friends, most of them have transitioned. I know my mother has many. She's not many of her girlfriends are left. But do we check in on them? Right? Do we check in on the friend that we may not have talked to in a minute or whatever? Just say hi. Time and distance should not change anything.
Especially now.
So, especially now.
Yes.
Because if a person pops in your mind and crosses your mind, there's a reason that person crossed and crossed your mind. So follow through.
Yes.
You don't need to know why. There's no need to know how this conversation is going to go. If they pop up in your mind, pick up the phone, send a text, pick up the phone. But if you feel like you just send a text. But pick up the phone and just say hi. Let them know you crossed their mind. And they will tell you why they crossed their mind, because they could have been praying in that moment for support, because they may have felt alone, or they may have felt a shift in their mood, and they may be experiencing seasonal woes.
Yes. Thank you.
Exactly.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
as we have committed to this conversation, we are supporting and moving this needle forward. And one last question I have for you is, what is your commitment for yourself, or for yourself? What have you committed to for your own personal self, to being part of the change or shifting for those, just in the shift, I would say, in the healing and wholeness for our people? What have you committed to for your own self to do or to be?
I was going to say presence, be more present. Um, More so being more visible.
Mm,
And there's so many tools to do that, to be more visible with this message and to help people know that they're not alone. Recently, I've had a TikTok channel for a while, but I started to do more TikTok um,
I'm excited about
where
that.
there's affirmations involved, where it's positive music.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of people that are out there praying on TikTok, um, showing up on YouTube on my channel, Empowered to Shine. Just supporting people in whatever way they need to be supported. We're very visual people. And
Mm-hmm.
so using those tools to help get the message out, to help people know that they're not alone, that there's someone who is listening to them. Most of the time when you put yourself out there, somebody's going to comment, somebody's going to email
Absolutely.
you, somebody's going to send you a direct message and say, thank you for that. I needed that.
Absolutely.
I was on the verge of suicide. I know that you see me, and that's what people want to do. They just want to be seen and heard.
Seen. Yep.
And so, just for myself, I have to be more visible with
Mm,
my message, and I have to be more visible and letting people know that they're not alone. So that's my commitment, to just be more visible and to be more present.
excellent. Excellent.
Hmm.
And we like your
Yes.
being visible,
Yes.
because you're such a powerful being and such a joy, honestly. you
Yes.
know you
Yes.
bring you light up the room. You bring joy here. You just bring
Yes.
so much joy to a room.
Yes.
So, Miss Viola.
Well, um community, in terms of the community, I've started an agency, and it's called Voices, both, and it's Voices of the Heart. And the reason why I've started that, along with the co-partner of mine, is that, you know, our heart is the soul of who we are.
Mm-hmm.
And when we can speak about our concerns, when we can speak about our fears or whatever, and support each other, support each other through social media, and just and one-on-one personally. I think that makes all the difference, all the difference. And that's what I'm doing, and do my Reiki, bring the community together also. That's in my professional life, and something that I do often to help the community also. This time of the year, and sometime during the summer, I get an umbrella, but this time of the year, I carry coats around in my car. I carry socks and gloves.
Nice.
And whenever I see someone out there that needs a coat, or needs a pair of gloves, I just say, here, take this. That's a
Mm-hmm.
way to just support. That's just a way to just support folks out there. Folks out there that might need it. It's not that and I consider it, it's the small things that we do. It's the small things that we do, that I do sometimes, that I think that makes a difference. That really makes a difference in folks'
That
lives.
ripple effect.
Yes, the
Absolutely.
ripple effect. And personally, in my personal life, I have I have started, and I have started educational fund, a college fund
Oh,
for the
nice.
folks in my family. We started that.
Oh,
And I've
nice.
also started, me and a couple others, I don't just take the credit for it myself, but I've also started, and I've also life insurance. You know what? I didn't know, if you take out life insurance for small babies, small kids, it makes a difference, because it's like a savings for their college, for their education. That's
Yeah,
something that
very
we didn't
nice.
know about. That's something that
Yeah,
we didn't know about.
but we didn't know, right?
And we
There's
didn't
many
have it.
people,
We didn't know.
and there's many people out here that don't know. So you bringing that up, it needs to be
Yes,
heard. So these are
yes,
ways. This is powerful. This is
yes.
very good, sis.
Yes, because life insurance for babies, after they're 6 months old, you can get life insurance, and it costs probably maybe 7 to 8, no more than $12 or $15 a month.
Right.
That would be their college fund.
Yeah.
That baby,
Yeah.
that baby.
Yeah.
Yes, so
That's
and you
awesome.
can pay that for the rest of their life. I mean, it doesn't go up until, instead
Yeah.
of waiting until you are 20, 25,
Oh,
or
right,
30, or
right.
40, 50. Yeah.
Okay.
So those are some little things that I'm doing, and I
Yeah.
want to continue
That's
to show.
awesome.
Yes,
Wow.
yes, yes,
That's
That is
awesome.
great.
yeah,
And
yeah.
thank you for the idea, Miss Viola. Because
Oh,
I was
yeah.
just thinking before we got on the call,
Uh-huh.
I put the Bucket Boys of Maryland on my budget list every week. And so what I do is I buy bottled water, and I'll put money into the wrapper.
Oh,
So a lot of
nice.
times when in the summer it's hot and they need water, and so I just put different denominations. So whichever bottle I grab, I just hand them that, and then they'll
Oh,
see the money in there.
wonderful,
But they can also use
wonderful,
that to fill their bottles,
wonderful.
or
Right.
whatever. So
Yes,
That's
now
awesome.
I can
isn't
buy
it?
the gloves and stuff and put money in there, so
Mm-hmm.
that, because I'm like, well, in the summertime they're hot, but in the
Right.
winter they really want water. So
Cold.
for
Mm-hmm.
that idea, I can
Yes,
use the scarves and gloves and that and hats and things and
yeah.
put money in there, and that
Yeah.
way I can support them
These
financially.
are awesome. Oh, these are such good
Isn't this
ideas.
awesome? That's
Such
passing
good
it along,
ideas. Just
passing
being
it
able
along.
to, right.
Yes,
And this is how
yes,
we show up, and
yes, yes,
we support
yes,
our communities in
yes,
small, right?
yes,
This, in
yes,
those ways,
yes,
it's
yes,
shifting that
yes,
energy, as what we
yes,
talked about
yes, yes,
earlier.
yes, yes.
And
Exactly.
finally, how can the community get in kind of connect with you? What's your social media or your website? Is there any way in which that the community can connect with each of you, either of you?
You want to go first, Miss Viola?
Well, the way that they can communicate with me right now is, um, I'm not really set up in a lot of ways. I'm setting up, and actually through my email address, they can contact me through, and
Okay.
that's, yes, through my email address. And
Which is
which is VIOLA4195 @gmail.
okay, awesome. And what
Yes,
I'll do is in our comments for this
yes.
conversation, I'll include the contact information
Okay, thank
if
you,
you'd like.
thank you.
And Latina?
I'm on Facebook at Latina D Harris. That's my business page. Instagram, Latina D Harris. TikTok, I am Latina Harris, and my YouTube channel is Empowered, the number two Shine, and my email is Harris. No, cancel that. My email is hello@latinaharris.com.
All right.
Excellent,
Thank you.
excellent. Thank
Excellent.
you.
All
Thank you,
right.
my sisters.
Yes. Thank
And,
you, Sarah.
as we close out this conversation, we've had many tips of ways in which that we may overcome our seasonal woes. Not just overcome, but we first must identify that we're experiencing them.
Mhm.
We've learned different ways in which the way in which that it can show up. The three ways that I mentioned in the early onset of feeling, blue, having zero energy, a change in your appetite from feeling hungry to not feeling hungry at all, the feeling of hopelessness or having thoughts of suicide or death. These are ways and tips and ways that you can identify that you may be experiencing these seasonal woes. Being in hibernation and, being in isolation,
Mhm.
suffering in silence. All of these ways in which that if you experience these things during a specific time of the year for more than 2 years, you are experiencing seasonal affective disorder. And a lot of the practices that my dear sisters have mentioned that can be supportive in this. And the takeaway that I would like for everyone to hear is that if it is your experience, no one gets to tell you how you feel.
Yes. Yes.
And in these times, whether you are experiencing seasonal woes or not, no one gets to tell you how the experience that you are having in their presence with them in the situation and circumstance, they don't get to tell you how it impacts you. You don't get to tell you that it doesn't matter. They don't get to tell that it doesn't matter, that you don't have that it wasn't that serious. That's another one that people have a tendency to say as they disrespect your experience. No one gets that right because your experience is your experience. Just like your assignment is your assignment. It is not to be taught, it is not to be discussed and entertained as to how somebody else feels about it or if they're the complete, right?
Mhm.
You get to say and have your own experience, whether that experience is one that allows you to feel loved and protected or one that you experience fear. That is your experience that you get to have. No one gets to tell you how to have it.
Mhm.
So as you move through the year, as you move through this time right now in this moment, some of you may feel like you don't want to have a family time, right? Many people don't, they look at it as family time. Many people don't celebrate the holidays nowadays, but they look at it as family time. Sometimes you may not feel because you Uncle Festa over here got something to say, and this might be the experience and do, and you just gonna cut it off and you just not gonna go. How about we set your intention before you go?
Mhm.
How about we put into practice cleansing our energy, as our sisters had mentioned? Cleansing the energy of the rooms that we going in. But what about praying before you go into a situation? What about being still and being able to check in with yourself and how you feel? And one good way to do that is to close your eyes and drop into your heart, because it disconnects from you, the thinking part of you, but it causes you to go in. But if just taking a moment to taking a breath, which brings you present to this now moment to understand how you feel. These are ways in which that you can honor yourself during this seasonal time of change, as we are continuous, life is continuing to happen, change is continuing to happen. So it is my ask that you honor yourself, that you honor the community in which that you live, your families, which is the first community, and then the communities that you live, that you work, so that we may experience a stronger community, a community that is together, that is healthy, and that is whole. Some very important resources that I will include: if you are in need of support during and you are experiencing seasonal affective disorder or experiencing any type of depression, any type of mental health, anxiety, doesn't always have to be sad, it can be anxiety, feeling of anxiousness, of being worried about the future. That's what anxiety is. You can be experiencing stress. There's so many different ways in which that you can be impacted, or just feeling the feeling of, you know what, I got to go to this family thing and I don't know what it is, but I don't feel right and I got a headache and I done felt sick or doing whatever. Maybe you need to have a conversation with somebody that can support you in unpacking what you are experiencing, because that is trauma that is calling up. We've all experienced traumatic circumstances. We've all experienced circumstances that have left us feeling less than good. So some of the resources that you can look at is therapy for Black men. You have the National Association of Social Workers, the Association of Black Psychologists. There is Black Central Therapy. There is therapy for Black girls, and there is also the Suicide Prevention Line. And another amazing organization that supports in suicide is Silence the Shame.
Yes.
That is specifically founded by a Black woman.
Yes.
Because how much many of us, including myself, has silenced myself in the shame of feeling suicidal.
Mm-hmm.
So all of these resources are available for our community. These are professionals who are focused in our community, with the exception of the Suicide Prevention Line. They do have, professionals that are available through that line, but the other organizations that I mentioned are Black founded, Black owned, and they specialize in supporting our people in moving the needle forward to healing and whole wellness. So I invite you to follow me at Coach SaraLiz on all social media platforms. That is Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. I ain't got no videos yet, but Clubhouse. I ain't got no videos yet, but you can identify me on Instagram as Coach SaraLiz, as well as my website, Sara-elizabeth.Phillips.com, which I will be putting, the availability of a blog that is conversation to this, to talk about if this was very supportive to you, and to open the conversation if there's a way in which that you may need support or help, or would like to be in contact with one of our coaches, our professionals here that we are speaking to be able to support you on your journey. You may go to my website at Sara-elizabeth.Phillips.com and go to the blog section, and it's the Let's Talk About section, and there'll be a space there where you can make a comment regarding seasonal woes and this experience. So I just want to thank you, my dear sisters, for your time. We over an hour, and I thank the audience for your support, and I pray that from this moment forward, that you will always be bold, that you may always be powerful, that you may always be authentic and stand in the truth of who you are.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Have an awesome, awesome evening and day. Thank you.
All right.